Someone built a swimming pool on top of a 200-meter vertical rock in the 6th century. No cranes, no machines, no explanation. And that's not even the craziest thing on this list, because one of these 3 structures contains an engineering secret so advanced, scientists didn't fully understand it until 1,000 years later. And it wasn't discovered in Rome or Egypt or Greece. It was hiding inside a cave in Afghanistan. Stay with me.
Incredible.
Number 1, the
this
palace
possible?
that should
It
have
looks
fallen.
advanced.
Imagine you're walking through the Sri Lankan jungle. Dense, flat, suffocating heat. Trees in every direction for miles. And then, the earth ends. A column of black volcanic rock punches straight out of the ground. No warning, no gradual slope. Just nothing, nothing, nothing. And then a 200-meter wall of pure vertical stone exploding into the sky like something underground decided it was done being buried. That rock is called Sigiriya. And on top of it, a king built a palace. Not a rough shelter, not a military bunker, a royal palace with swimming pools, terrace gardens, audience halls, and landscaped courtyards. All of it perched on the summit of a rock tower so sheer that even getting close to it feels like a threat. Here's what nobody tells you about Sigiriya. The palace wasn't the first thing you encountered. King Kashyapa, the man who built this, wanted to destroy you psychologically before you ever set foot on the rock. So the approach began with something that still baffles water engineers today. A symmetrical garden complex fed entirely by an underground hydraulic system, pressurized channels, directional fountains, water flowing upward through hand-carved pipes, 15 centuries before modern plumbing. Here's the part that will mess with your head. Those fountains, they still work. Right now. During the rainy season, the water still flows through those ancient channels. Engineers have studied the system and called it, quote, a masterpiece of ancient urban planning. The pipes are still functional after 1,500 years. You haven't even started climbing yet. Past the water gardens comes the mirror wall, a stretch of polished white plaster so perfectly reflective that the king could see his own face as he walked alongside it. And visitors, for century after century, carved poems into that surface. Ancient graffiti from people who made the same climb you're about to make. Over 1,000 of those inscriptions still survive today, some of them 1,000 years old. Then the frescoes begin. Life-sized figures of women painted directly into a sheltered cavity of the rock face. Ochre, deep red, layered green. Their colors have survived 14 centuries of monsoon humidity and baking tropical heat. Nobody knows exactly how the artists reached that near-vertical surface to paint them. The current theory involves rope scaffolding hundreds of feet above the jungle floor. Hundreds of feet above the jungle floor, painting delicate portraits on bare rock. And then, before the final staircase to the summit, you hit the gateway. 2 enormous lion paws, carved from solid granite, each one large enough to swallow a standing adult. The lion they once belonged to is gone now, but those paws flank the entrance to the final climb, and they were the last thing you saw before ascending into the palace above. Everything up there, every stone block, every column, every tile, every cubic meter of building material had to be carried up by hand. No rope and pulley system has been conclusively identified. No ramp structure has been found, just the finished palace somehow, on top of a rock that modern tourists struggle to climb empty-handed. Kashyapa lived up there for 18 years. He had seized power by force, exiled his brother, and knew a reckoning was coming. He built Sigiriya not just as a palace, but as a statement, a vertical, volcanic, inescapable declaration that he could not be reached. His brother came back with an army, and when that army finally arrived, Kashyapa did something no one expected. He came down from the rock, he met his brother on flat ground, and he died there in battle, within sight of the palace that was supposed to make him untouchable. Sigiriya still stands, watching the jungle, waiting for someone to fully explain how it was ever built at all.
Number 2, the city that lived inside a mountain. If Sigiriya rises above the earth, this next place disappears into it. Deep in the Hindu Kush mountains of central Afghanistan, where the air is thin, the winters are genuinely brutal, and the passes are narrow enough to funnel armies. A sandstone cliff stretches for nearly a mile along the edge of a high valley. At first glance, it looks like ordinary rock. Look closer, the cliff is staring back at you. Hundreds of carved openings puncture the rock face, doorways, windows, passageways, all connected, all carved by human hands over the course of 5 centuries. This wasn't a hideout. It wasn't a temporary shelter. This was a full civilization, a city built inside solid rock. This was Bamiyan. At its height, Bamiyan was home to thousands of Buddhist monks. They had carved their entire world into that cliff face. Meditation cells, communal dining halls, elaborate chapels painted with iconography sophisticated enough to make art historians genuinely emotional. The level of detail inside those caves, hundreds of meters up a sheer cliff face, is something photographs can't fully capture. But the caves were only half the story, because standing at opposite ends of that carved cliff were 2 colossal Buddha statues, also carved from the living rock, not placed there, not assembled, carved out of the mountain itself. The surrounding rock chipped away over decades until the figure emerged. The smaller statue stood 38 meters tall, the larger one 55 meters, taller than a 15-story building. At the time of its carving, it was one of the largest standing figures on the face of the earth, and it was made by workers suspended on rope scaffolding, armed with iron chisels and wooden mallets, chipping sandstone by hand, hundreds of feet above a valley floor with no blueprint, no laser level, no measuring technology beyond a rope and their own trained eyes. The finished statues were plastered and painted, vivid gold and red, visible for miles across the mountain passes. Because Bamiyan sat directly on the Silk Road, merchants from China, pilgrims from India, diplomats from Persia and the Mediterranean, they all came through this valley, and they all looked up. The cultural mixture at Bamiyan was extraordinary. Buddhist imagery painted with Hellenistic stylistic influence, Indian pigments applied with Iranian techniques. It was a crossroads civilization in the truest sense, absorbing and transforming every tradition that passed through it. But here is the thing that stopped scientists cold when they finally studied the cave murals in detail. Hidden inside those painted walls was a technique that European Renaissance painters would claim credit for inventing centuries later: oil-based paint. The artists of Bamiyan were mixing their pigments with walnut oil and poppy oil to create richer, more vibrant, more durable colors. They were doing this in the 5th and 6th centuries AD. The technique wouldn't be documented in Western art history until the European Renaissance, nearly 1,000 years later, when Flemish painters were credited with the invention. They didn't invent it. Monks in a cave city in Afghanistan were doing it first, and it was forgotten. Bamiyan thrived for centuries. The city cliff hummed with activity, pilgrims resting, monks copying sacred texts, traders pausing before the next brutal mountain crossing. It was a living organism of sandstone and devotion, built incrementally across generations, each new carving adding to a structure that had already outlasted the lifespans of everyone who built it. In 2001, the great statues were destroyed by explosives. 1,500 years of survival, conquered by nothing, no earthquake, no flood, no conquest, and then gone in a single detonation. 2 of the most extraordinary works of ancient human hands, erased in an afternoon. The caves remain. The murals survive in fragments. Somewhere in that honeycombed cliff, the oil paints are still drying, slowly, patiently, waiting for someone to put the full story together. Number 3, the arch that defies physics now. What would you build if you wanted to send a message to every civilization that would ever exist after you? The Sassanid emperors of Persia had a very specific answer. They built it in brick. Located near the ancient city of Ctesiphon in what is now central Iraq, the Takht Khosra, the Arch of Khosrau, is a structure that by every reasonable engineering principle should not be standing. It is the largest single-span brick arch ever constructed in the ancient world. Let those numbers land. The arch spans 26 meters across. It rises 37 meters high. That is the equivalent of a 12-story building, built entirely from fired clay brick, with no columns supporting it from below, no steel reinforcement hidden inside, no concrete core, no internal framework of any kind. Just an enormous, perfect parabolic curve of brick, holding itself up through pure geometry for 1,400 years. Here's why this is engineering madness. When you build an arch in brick, every single course of masonry you lay on the ascending curve is fighting gravity. Each brick is cantilevering into open air, leaning outward, desperate to fall. The traditional solution was centering, a full wooden framework built first, supporting the arch until the final keystone locked everything in place and the structure became self-supporting. But centering for an arch this size would have required timber on a scale that was essentially impossible in this region. Central Iraq doesn't have dense forests. Large lumber was scarce, expensive, and logistically nightmarish to import at that volume. So the Sassanid engineers invented something else. They built the arch in slightly inclined courses, each layer of bricks angled slightly backward, leaning into the mass of the wall behind it rather than forward into open air. This allowed the structure to advance outward without needing support below. It was a technique of extraordinary precision. Every single brick had to be placed at exactly the right angle. One miscalculation in the geometry and the entire structure would come down during construction. They got it right. When foreign ambassadors arrived to meet the Shahanshah, the King of Kings, they were walked through that arch first, deliberately, intentionally. Standing beneath a vault 37 meters overhead, in a space that wide, torchlit, with the throne hall stretching ahead into shadow, visitors were engineered to feel exactly one thing: that the power of Persia was not of human scale. The palace around the arch collapsed centuries ago, taken by floods, wars, neglect, and the slow erosion of 1,000 years. A flood in 1888 brought down part of one wing. The central vault has not moved. It stood through the Arab conquest, through the Mongol invasions, through centuries of abandonment, through wars fought around it, over it, and occasionally through it. That parabolic curve of brick laid by workers who understood geometry in ways we're still trying to fully reverse engineer, it simply refuses to come down. 3 structures: a palace on a vertical rock with plumbing that still works today, a city carved entirely inside a mountain that invented oil paint 1,000 years early, and a brick arch that has held a 12-story curve in the air for 14 centuries without a single support. None of them were built with technology we recognize. None of them have fully satisfying explanations for how they were constructed, and all 3 of them were either destroyed, forgotten, or nearly lost entirely, while far less impressive things made it into every history textbook. What else did we miss? What else is still out there, carved into a cliff, balanced on a rock, holding itself up through geometry we still don't fully understand, waiting for someone to look close enough? If you want more of this, the structures, the civilizations, the engineering secrets history buried, subscribe, because we're just getting started.